You know, in public health, we are practically swimming in data. I mean, everything from huge national surveys to individual hospital records. And all this information, it holds the key to tackling some of our biggest health challenges. But the question is, how do we unlock those secrets? Well, let's find out.
Right, that's the big question, isn't it? It's one thing to have all this data, but how do we actually make sense of it all? How do we spot the patterns, figure out the risks, and find those little nuggets of insight that can lead to healthier communities? It's a massive task, but it's an incredibly important one.
And for countless public health professionals, the answer is a really specialized tool called SAS. It's a programming language that was basically born to do this stuff: statistical analysis, data management, and turning raw, messy numbers into clear, actionable intelligence.
So, to really see SAS in action, we need a real-world mission, right? So in this first section, let's frame our work around a public health challenge that I think we can all relate to.
We're not just going to talk about code in some abstract way. Nope, we're going to apply it. Throughout this whole explainer, we'll be using obesity data as our case study. This way you can see exactly how an analyst would approach a real problem, from start to finish.
But before we can write a single line of code, every good analyst knows you have to get familiar with your toolkit. So in this next section, let's go over a few key resources and concepts that are pretty essential for doing any kind of public health analysis in SAS.
Okay, first up is something called the Healthy Eating Index, or HEI. The easiest way to think about this is as a report card for diet quality. It lets us take all this raw food data and give it a score from 0 to 100. It's a standardized way to measure how well a person's diet lines up with the official guidelines. It's an absolutely crucial benchmark for our analysis.
Next, we've got the AHRQ quality indicators. Now, these are really powerful software tools that let analysts dig into what's called administrative data, think hospital billing records, to measure things like patient safety, preventable problems, or how often patients get readmitted. They help us answer really specific questions about the quality of healthcare.
And finally, there's national survey data support. Look, working with these gigantic national surveys can be tricky. So this is basically a whole collection of tools, sample code, and documents, all designed to make that process a lot easier. It just helps make sure that analysts can use these vital data sets correctly and efficiently.
All right, so how does SAS keep all this data organized? It uses something called a library. Honestly, the simplest way to think of a SAS library is just as a shortcut or a nickname for a folder on your computer. So instead of typing out a super long file path every single time, you just use the library name. You can see some common examples here that you'd see in public health, like NHANES for the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, or BRFSS for the Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System. Super handy. Okay, we've got the context, we understand the tools, now it's time for the main event. In this section, we're actually going to write some code. We're going to walk through the fundamental steps of a real data analysis project. Let's do this.
Every single project starts right here. The very first step is telling SAS where our files are. We do that with a libname statement. It's as simple as that. We're just giving a nickname, in this case my data, to a folder on our computer so we can get to it easily later.
So once SAS knows where the folder is, we need to bring in our specific file. For that, we use a procedure called proc import. This one little line of code basically tells SAS, hey, go grab that CSV file named obesity_data and turn it into a proper SAS data set that we can actually work with.
Now, you never, ever want to analyze data blind. So the next logical step is to explore it. And a procedure called proc contents is perfect for this. This gives you a bird's eye view of your data set. It lists out all your variables, what type they are. It's like looking at the table of contents before you start reading a book. It's a critical step.
And now we get to ask our first question. To get a simple count of, say, the different obesity categories in our data, we can use proc_freq. That simple line generates a frequency table. And just like that, we've gone from a raw data file to our very first insight in just a few steps. Pretty cool, right?
So, we just walked through that entire basic workflow, from a big picture question all the way down to a concrete analytical step. Let's take a moment to wrap up and talk about where you can go from here.
Let's do a quick recap. First, the most important thing to remember is that SAS is basically the bridge that gets us from messy health data to real, understandable insights. Second, those specialized resources like the HEI are what give our analysis meaning and context. And finally, that basic workflow is super simple and logical. You point SAS to your data, you import the file you need, and then you run your analysis.
We really hope this explainer was a helpful starting point for you.
If you have any questions or if you have ideas for future topics you'd like to see us break down like this, please let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you.
So we'll just leave you with this one thought. You've just seen the fundamental building blocks for answering really critical questions with data. So with these tools in hand, what's the first public health question you would want to tackle? Thanks for joining us.